Well, I know that I told you a story from college last week, but I have another one for you this week, okay? So I went to Geneva College just north of Pittsburgh, and this year, this year's gonna be 10 years since I graduated college. 2012 to 2022, it's crazy. 10 years since I graduated. But Geneva is a Christian college, okay? And so when you go to Geneva, there are totally separate residence halls, okay? Guys live in certain buildings, girls live in other buildings. We did have open hours when, you could visit the other dorm rooms, but the buildings were totally 100% separate. We honored God at Geneva, I didn't even actually kiss Gwen until we got married, Somebody said, yeah, right. Yeah, it was you. Oh, yeah. If you were at the Valentine's Day dinner, go ahead and ask Denise and Mike about that one. Anyway, I won't embarrass you right up here. Anyway, my junior year, I decided to be an RA. I signed up to be an RA. I got the position and I was placed in a building called Pierce Hall, which is the residence hall where all the freshman guys, okay? So it was a weird place, Pierce Hall, weird place. I was the RA of Pierce basement, so it was even weirder. It was the bottom floor. Didn't get a lot of natural light, And the laundry room for the entire building was in the basement, okay? So everyone walked down there and did their laundry. And we were all guys, so we had bins in case you forgot to get your laundry. So everyone would just throw their wet laundry in these bins so it would smell everywhere. So not only was there a bunch of guys in a basement, but the laundry room was down there. It kind of had a unique smell. But I was the RA of Pierce Basement. And the year I did it, I had about 30 kids, about 30 students. And so it was really great. And I got to meet a lot of people, but one of those people's names was Justin. He was a short little dude on the floor. He was really short. He got on my nerves a few times, so I just wrote him up. He still jokes with me that, you wrote me up, man. Yeah, I did. My nerves, I'm your RA. But over the course of the time together, we became really good friends. Eventually, Gwen and I called him the third wheel, because it seemed every time we went on a date, Justin was with us in the back seat. I don't know why we let him come along, but every time he was with us, Justin the third wheel. So we met my junior year, and then my senior year, Justin and I lived in a house together with some other guys, and it was a great time, but then I graduated, got married, moved here, moved away. And then when Justin graduated, he was 2 years behind me. So when he graduated 2 years after I did, he lived in DC for a while. Then he moved to Texas. But that whole time, we really kept in contact, all that 10 years. Seemed like maybe once a year, but we keep in contact. And he's still one of my best friends to this day. And a few months ago, he called Gwen and I, and he said, my job is such that I work from home, so I can live wherever I want. And I'm thinking about moving here to be around you guys. I said, why in the world would you want to do that? But he said, you know what? I really want to be around there. I really want to be in a community. I really want to be here. So long story short, Justin was the guy playing bass in the worship set. Isn't that cool? So, it's just amazing. And I was thinking about our worship. It's weird to think about all that had to happen for us to be friends. I had to want to be an RA. They had to put him on my floor. We both had to decide to go to this little Christian college in Pittsburgh, right? And if you think about it, friendships are an amazing thing, aren't they? Think about it. C.S. Lewis said this in his book, The Four Loves. He said, in friendship, we think we have chosen our peers. In reality, a few years difference in the dates of our births, a few more miles between certain houses, the choice of one university instead of another, the accident of a topic being raised or not raised at a first meeting, any of these chances might have kept us apart. But for a Christian, there are, strictly speaking, no chances. A secret master of ceremonies has been at work. Christ, who said to the disciples, "Ye have not chosen me, but I've chosen you," can truly say to every group of Christian friends, "Ye have not chosen one another, but I have chosen you for another." The friendship is not a reward for our discriminating and good taste in finding one another out. It is the instrument by which God reveals to each of us the beauties of others. Isn't that cool? So today we're going to look at the friend that God chose for David. And his name was Jonathan. So it might be a little unexpected of a title as we talk about friendship today, but the title of the message is Go in Peace. Go in peace. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn them to 1 Samuel chapter 20. 1 Samuel chapter 20. Now, for the most part, if you've been with us, you know that we've been basically going through chapter by chapter of the narrative of the life of David. Today, we're going to go back and look at some things that we skipped over before, and they all pertain to this relationship between David and Jonathan, this friendship between the two. So for now, though, let's start by picking up where we left off last week. We ended last week in 1 Samuel 19. So let's look at 1 Samuel 20, verse 1. Then David from Naioth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, "What have I done? What is my guilt and what is my sin before your father that he seeks my life?" And he said to him, "Far from it, you shall not die. Behold, my father does neither great or small without disclosing it to me. And why should my father hide this from me? It is not so." But David vowed again, saying, "Your father knows well that I have found favor in your eyes, and he thinks, do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death." Then Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you say, I will do for you." David said to Jonathan, "Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit at table with the king. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field till the third day at evening. If your father misses me at all, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the clan. If he says, good, it will be well with your servant. But if he is angry, then know that harm is determined by him. Therefore, deal kindly with your servant, for you brought your servant into a covenant of the Lord with you. But if there is guilt in me, kill me yourself, for why should you bring me into your father?" And Jonathan said, "Far be it from you. If I knew that it was determined by my father that harm should come to you, would I not tell you?" So David goes to Jonathan and says, "Look, I'm but a step from death. Saul is on my case. He's trying to kill me." And Jonathan responds by saying, "Whatever you say, David, I will do for you." And as David is outlining what he wants Jonathan to do for him, that's what this is. In verse 8, if you notice, David reminds Jonathan of this covenant that was made between them. Now, this covenant is obviously a really important thing. It's central to their friendship. So we should ask, what was this covenant? What was the nature of it? Why was it made? To understand David and Jonathan, you really have to understand this covenant. It's important to understand why it happened in the first place. So let's rewind back to 1 Samuel chapter 18. Let's go back there. This is right after David kills Goliath. Verse 1, as soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. And Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. So this is important. Did you notice who initiated the friendship and the covenant in the first place? It says the soul of Jonathan was knit to David. Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Jonathan made a covenant with David. Look at the language. It was Jonathan who initiated this. So what caused Jonathan to initiate this covenant, this friendship between the two? What made Jonathan knit his soul to David? Well, we don't have time to read this whole passage, but let's rewind back further to 1 Samuel chapter 14. Now, the heading in my Bible before the passage says, Jonathan defeats the Philistines. Sound familiar? That's what David just did. He just defeated Goliath, the Philistine. But this is before this, 1 Samuel 14. Look how Jonathan talks as he goes to defeat the Philistines. Look, verse 6. Jonathan said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few." Look at verse 12. And Jonathan said to his armor bearer, "Come up after me, for the Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." Does this language sound familiar? You remember the passage I preached when David defeated Goliath? What was the language that David used before Goliath? Here it is again. Then David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day, who? The Lord will deliver you into my hand. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give it into our hand." They use the same language when they're going after the Philistines. The Lord will do it. The Lord, the Lord, the Lord. How many times did they both say, "The Lord will do it"? Listen, Jonathan was knit to the soul of David because David embodied the things most precious to Jonathan's heart. He just watched this young boy defeat Goliath in the name of the Lord. And he himself went to defeat the Philistines. What? In the name of the Lord. He witnessed David do what he himself valued and believed in the most, to draw from the Lord's strength, not his own, to trust in the Lord and to honor and glorify the Lord amongst all of Israel. They had a shared passion for the Lord. That's what drew them together. A shared passion for the Lord is what bonded them together in this deep covenant friendship. So I want to ask you this morning, what are your friendships based on? How deep are they? What makes someone your friend? What are your friendships based on? You probably have heard this proverb before, but Proverbs 18:24, it says, "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." The phrase at the beginning of this proverb can be translated as a man of friends. A man of friends. What does that mean? In other words, it's someone who makes many friends. But what are those friendships based on? Being a man of friends may sound good. Oh, I have lots of friends. Look at all of my friends. It may sound good to have a lot of friends, but the proverb says that's not a A man of many companions may come to ruin. Why is that? Why does it say this? What is the proverb saying? One study I saw put it this way. This is so good. They will be ruined by extravagance, by keeping up with everybody, and by evil communications. Ever known someone who seems to be in the middle of everyone's business? Knows everybody, always a busybody in the middle of it all? See, when you have many companions, you do so out of a desire to keep up with everyone so you can be in the middle of everything. Then you can be in the middle of all of the gossip and talk about everyone. But a man of many companions, what happens? They come to ruin. Because the reality is those friendships aren't actually friendships. They're not based on anything substantive. Nothing lasting or nothing real. Aristotle famously quoted one time that a friend to all is a friend to none. Real friendships are based on the same things that the friendship of David and Jonathan was based on? A shared passion for the Lord, to honor and glorify him. When you have a friendship that is based on that, then it is a special one. Listen to this quote. It is only those people who, like Jonathan, have given themselves away to something greater than themselves who possess such freedom to love. That's the kind of friend that I want to have. Someone who has given themselves away to something greater than themselves. Because they are the friends that will possess such freedom to love you. And you can be the type of friend which will possess the freedom to love others if you give away yourself to something greater than yourself. Proverbs 17:17, it says, a friend loves at all times. How? Because they've given themselves away to something greater than themselves. And a brother is born for adversity. What are your friendships based on? So as Jonathan makes this covenant with David, he goes above and beyond and does something else in verse 4. Look what he does. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David and his armor and even his sword and his bow and his belt. Now this was more of a gift. This was more than a gift of material things. When Jonathan gave David his robe and his weapons, his armor, he was actually giving David his endorsement, okay? Jonathan was Saul's son, remember, and he was a military leader. He was respected. People were loyal to him. And yet he humbled himself and gave his robe and his armor to this shepherd boy, David, in front of his own army. Jonathan endorsed David. So here's a question I have for you. Here's a good one. You might want to write this down. It'll be in the Monday Minute tomorrow too. Make sure you get that one. But this one will be in that, and I want you to think about this one. Listen, are you a robe giver or a robe demander? In other words, are you willing to give support to others in what God has called them to do? Or are you always the one demanding the attention and the support of others? Are you a robe giver or are you a robe demander? If there was anyone who could have simply kept demanding support from others, it was Jonathan. He was the king's son. He had a right to demand support. But instead of demanding the support from others, he supported David in his calling. He endorsed him in front of his own army because he recognized God working in and through David. I love this quote. Listen, this deed on Jonathan's part was an act of faith. Only faith makes us willing to be the lesser. Faith causes us, I love this. Faith causes us to surrender the rights we pretend to have. Isn't that good? Faith causes us to surrender the rights that we pretend to have, where sin would have made enemies. There's no reason Jonathan and David should have been friends. None. Jonathan was the son of Saul. There's no reason they should have been friends. But where sin would have made enemies, faith made brothers. Listen, the body of Christ is most effective when we encourage and support one another in the unique callings we have instead of demanding support from each other. Instead of demanding that others give us the rights that we pretend to have. Are you a robe giver or are you a robe demander? I gotta make sure I get mine. Are you a robe giver or a robe demander? Listen, if we at Reach Church are truly living to reach all people with nothing but Jesus, there's no room for robe demanding. It can't happen. There's no room for ego. This is a robe-giving church. Support, encouragement, building the kingdom. That's what we're about here. 1 Thessalonians 5:11, therefore, encourage one another and build one another up, just as you are doing. Listen, if Jonathan gave David his robe, you should be able to give yours away too, okay? Because don't forget, you prodigal son, you were given quite the robe yourself when you walked out of that pig pen that you were lying in. That's where you started. And the only robe that you got is because when you went home, the Father bestowed his best robe on you. So listen, you have no right to demand a robe from other people. You can only give it away because it was given to you by grace. So remember that every time you're tempted to demand the robe from other people, it's not yours to demand. It's only yours to give away. Now I better stop this before I really start preaching. All right, we got to keep moving here. But man, you are called to be a robe demander. It is a gift paid with a high price. Lay down those rights that you pretend to have. They're not yours. They're not yours. Oh, and then I could just mention Jesus, who in humility was with God, stepped down from heaven. He gave us quite the robe, didn't he? Amen. Amen. Are you a robe giver or a robe demander? Now that we've seen how this covenant was formed between David and Jonathan, let's get back to 1 Samuel chapter 20. Let's get back to it. And Jonathan said to David, the Lord, the God of Israel, be witness. When I have sounded out my father about this time tomorrow on the third day, behold, if he is well disposed toward David, shall I not then send and disclose it to you? But should it please my father to do you harm, the Lord do so to Jonathan, and more also, if I do not disclose it to you and send you away that you may go in safety. May the Lord be with you, as he has been with my father. If I am still alive, show me the steadfast love of the Lord, that I may not die. And do not cut off your steadfast love from my house forever, when the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. And Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord take vengeance on David's enemies. And Jonathan made David swear again by his love for him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Now you have to know, in those days, when there was a change in the royal line for the throne, usually the previous family line would be completely slaughtered. That's what would happen. So by asking David not to cut off your steadfast love from my house, Jonathan was asking David to preserve his family when David and his family ascended to the throne and David became the king. Now, this seems like an obvious request, right? Well, when you become the king, can you please not kill my family? But you have to remember the context of when Jonathan is asking this of David. Listen, at this point, Jonathan is in the driver's seat. He's the son of the king. He is the prince. His father was still the king at this point. David was the one on the run. He was the one fleeing for his life. And yet in this moment, Jonathan, the prince, is the one asking David to spare him. What faith! I love this quote. There has seldom, if ever, been exhibited a finer instance of triumphant faith than when the prince, with all the resources of his kingdom at his beck, made this request of the helpless outlaw. So that's what David was. And I want you to understand that in saying this, Jonathan was giving up his position and right to the throne. He gave it up. And not only was he giving up his right to the throne, listen, he was making a covenant. He entered into a covenant with the one who was taking the throne away from him. Look at verse 16 again. Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord take vengeance on David's enemies. I want you to understand this should not have been, but by Jonathan's faith, it was. Now, in the world we live in today, I think that we use the term friend really casually, don't we? I mean, just look at your Facebook friends. You know, are they your friends? Some are, some aren't, I don't know. But the story of David and Jonathan should show you something. Listen, here it is. True friendships cost something. True friendships cost something. To become another's friend in the true sense is to take the other into such a close living fellowship. Notice it says to become another friend in the true sense is to take the other into such close living fellowship that his life and ours are knit together as one. It is far more than a pleasant companionship in bright sunny hours. A genuine friendship is entirely unselfish. It seeks no benefit or good of its own. It does not love for what it may receive, but for what it may give. Its aim is not to be served, but to serve. And that's why true friendships cost something. Remember what Jesus said in John chapter 15? Greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. Oh, that's a cost. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. Jesus was saying, I have loved you by laying down my very life for you. And that is how you are called to love one another. As I laid down my life for you, so you laid down your life for others. Not to be served, but to serve. True friendships come at a cost. Hear John 3:16 a lot. What about 1 John 3:16? By this we know love, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. True friendships cost something. It cost Jonathan, it cost David, it cost the disciples, and it certainly cost Jesus an awful lot to call us friends, didn't it? Do your friendships cost something? Do they cost anything at all? Listen, if they mean something, they're going to cost something. Do your friendships cost something? So, as we've looked at this relationship, this friendship between David and Jonathan, I hope you have a better understanding of what biblical friendship is and what it looks like. Hopefully you really think about these things and assess your own friendships. Because who wouldn't love to have David and Jonathan friendships in their life? I know I would, I do. I hope you find them. I hope that you live in them. David and Jonathan's friendship truly is inspiring. You know, just Google friendship, you'll probably find David and Jonathan somewhere. It was one of a kind. It was once in a lifetime. It was a true, self-sacrificing, God-centered friendship. So it would be really easy to end the message here by inspiring you to have David and Jonathan friendships. You know, seek them out, develop them, or I could tell you how to be a better friend. You know, here's the 3 steps to be a better friend and all that kind of stuff, right? That would be really easy to end there. But that can't be the end of the message because I didn't tell you the end of the story of David and Jonathan yet. So here's the last part. This one of a kind, inspiring once in a lifetime friendship, it came to an end. You know that? They never tell that part of the story. They parted ways. David had to go on without Jonathan, and Jonathan had to go on without David. Perhaps the greatest humanly friendship in the Bible ends, and it ends with weeping and tears. Look at 1 Samuel 20, verse 41. And they kissed one another and wept with one another, David weeping the most. I hope that you've, through the past few weeks, understand the context of what is happening. We probably do even more so in going through all of it. At this point in the story, with everything going on around them, they had no choice but to part ways. David would flee in panic, and he would be a fugitive for years, and Jonathan would go back to his deranged father. Besides one other time in 1 Samuel chapter 23, just for a brief moment, they see each other for a few minutes. But this would be the last time that David and Jonathan would be together, besides that one other very short time. This is the last time that these two best friends would be together. So I could end this message by inspiring you to cultivate real friendships and have a David and have a Jonathan, and you should do that. You should pursue deep and meaningful and lasting friendships that are self-sacrificing, that are robe-giving friendships. We should pursue all of that. We should pursue those types of friendships. But I wouldn't be telling the full story if I also didn't read you the fine print. And the fine print was that even this friendship between David and Jonathan ended in a tearful goodbye. They had to move in different directions because God called them to different things. The friendship between David and Jonathan came to an end, but it's in that ending where we find what really made their friendship what it was. Look at 1 Samuel 20, verse 42. Then Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, because we have sworn, both of us, in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord shall be between me and you, and between my offspring and your offspring forever.' And he rose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. Go in peace, because the Lord shall be between us." Go in peace. The Lord shall be between us. See, the story of David and Jonathan isn't really about a friendship between two people. It's about the one who was between them. Circumstances caused these two people their friendship to come to an end. But the one who was between them, the one who they both had a shared passion for, the one who was between them in that covenant they made with each other, he never comes to an end. And that's why even in a tearful goodbye, Jonathan could say, "Go in peace. Go in peace." I read this verse earlier, but look at the last part of it again. A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Who is that friend? He's the only real, constant one that you can find in your life. Even David and Jonathan, they didn't see each other anymore. But the one who was between them, he was constant. The one between David and Jonathan is the one who sticks closer than a brother. He is our Jesus, our friend forever. And that's why even in the middle of this terrible and awful situation that David and Jonathan were in, as Jonathan's own father was trying to kill David, and as David was fleeing for his life and becoming a fugitive, that's why even as Jonathan, he had to go back to his deranged father. And we didn't read this verse earlier in chapter 20, but you know that Saul actually threw a spear at his own son, Jonathan? And that's what Jonathan knew he was going back to. That's why even when Jonathan was going back to Saul, and that's why even as David was fleeing for his life as a fugitive, that's why even as their friendship was coming to an end with weeping and tears. Jonathan could say, go in peace. Go in peace. Because even though we part here together today, there is still a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And so listen, church, there can always be peace in your life. There can always be peace because there is always one constant one. Because Jesus said, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. Go in peace because he is with you always, even until the end of the age. He is the friend. He is the friend who will always stick closer than a brother. Even in the chaos, even when your circumstances change, even when you part ways, even when your world is crumbling apart, even though you may have lost somebody you love, even in your confusion, and even in the tearful goodbyes that you cry, even in the weeping, oh, what a friend we have in Jesus. What a friend we have in Jesus. That sweet hymn, one of the lines that says, oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Listen, he is your peace. He is your peace. So no matter what is happening around you, no matter what life has brought you, no matter how many tearful goodbyes that you've cried, no matter how many times you've wept at loss, no matter how many times people have disappointed you, have walked out on you, no matter what, oh, what a friend you have in Jesus, the only constant one. He is your peace. So go in peace today. Go in peace and know what a friend you have in Jesus.